What's the salary where money stops being stressful? 60,000? 200,000? Here's the uncomfortable answer. There isn't one. People earning $150,000 a year report feeling just as financially stretched as people earning $75,000. The number on your paycheck was never the fix. The moves you make at that number are. Today we're covering the exact moves for 3 real income brackets, so you know exactly which one you're in and what to fix first. Before we get into it, here's the structure. We're covering 3 brackets: $50,000 a year, $100,000 a year, and $180,000 a year and up. Every figure in this video is checked against a primary source, the IRS, the Federal Reserve, Fidelity's own published research, so nothing here is a rounded guess or a recycled statistic. Find your bracket, but don't only watch your own section. The mistakes waiting at the bracket above yours are usually the mistakes you're about to make in a few years anyway, and it helps to see them coming. Why these 3 specific numbers instead of round tens of thousands? Each bracket in this video is roughly double the one before it, 50 to 100, 100 to 180. That's deliberate. A raise from $50,000 to $60,000 doesn't usually change your financial strategy. A number that roughly doubles your income does, which is why these 3 brackets each get a genuinely different playbook instead of the same 5 tips repeated with bigger numbers attached. One methodology note before we start: the paycheck to paycheck data in the opening covers households, but the tax and contribution numbers throughout this video use individual, single-filer figures, since that's the version most people can apply directly to their own paycheck without needing to know a partner's income too. If you're combining finances with a partner, your real numbers, especially your Roth IRA eligibility later in this video, will differ from what's shown here. Let's start here, because this is the bracket that gets the least sympathy online and needs the most precision in real life. At $50,000 a year after federal income tax and payroll tax, you're taking home around $42,355 a year. That's about $3,530 a month. State tax isn't included in that number since it depends on where you live, so your real number will likely be a little lower. $3,530 has to cover rent, groceries, transportation, insurance, and ideally some amount of saving. At this income, every dollar is doing more work than it will at any other bracket in this video. That's exactly why the order you tackle things in matters so much here. Get the order wrong and you can work just as hard as someone at double your income and still feel like you're falling behind. There are 3 moves that matter most at $50,000, and the order isn't optional. First, eliminate any high-interest consumer debt before you do anything else, including before you invest. The average American credit card balance right now sits at $6,610, and the average rate on a balance that's actually accruing interest is 22.15%. Let's actually run that math, because the number is worse than it sounds. If you only make the minimum payment on a $6,610 balance at that rate, the payment barely covers the interest each month. Run it forward, and you are still carrying that same balance 50 years later, having paid tens of thousands of dollars in interest on a debt that started at $6,610. Now compare that to committing a flat $350 a month instead. That same balance is fully paid off in 24 months. And the total interest paid drops to roughly $1,600. Same starting debt, completely different outcome based entirely on one decision. There is no retirement account, no index fund, nothing available to you that reliably beats a guaranteed 22% cost sitting on a credit card statement. Pay that off before a single additional dollar goes anywhere else. One quick clarification before moving on. Not all debt deserves the same urgency. The 22% average credit card rate above is why credit cards specifically go first. Federal student loans, by contrast, typically sit in the 5 to 7% range. That's still worth paying down, but it doesn't necessarily need to happen before you start investing, the way credit card debt does. Treat high-interest debt, generally anything above roughly 8 or 9%, as the emergency. Treat lower interest debt as something to pay down steadily, while everything else in this bracket moves forward at the same time. Second, once the high-interest debt is handled, build a starter emergency fund. Not the full 3 to 6 months of expenses yet, just enough that a $500 car repair or a broken laptop doesn't put you right back into debt. A $1,000 buffer is a realistic first target. It won't survive a job loss, but it will absorb the small emergencies that are actually the most common ones, and those are the ones most likely to knock you off track. A quick note on where to keep it. High-yield savings accounts are currently paying meaningfully more interest than a typical checking or standard savings account, often several percentage points more for the exact same government-backed safety. There's no reason to leave that buffer sitting somewhere earning next to nothing while you build it up. Third, once you have that buffer and you're debt-free, start contributing to a Roth IRA, even if what you can afford is small. For 2026, the contribution limit is $7,500 a year if you're under 50. You almost certainly won't max that out at this income, and that's completely fine. The goal at this stage isn't to hit the ceiling, it's to start the habit and let time do the rest of the work. Here's what that habit is actually worth. Contribute $7,500 a year for 10 straight years at a moderate long-run average return of 7%, and you end up with about $103,000 on total contributions of only $75,000. Keep going for 20 years and that becomes roughly $307,000 on contributions of $150,000. That's the entire case for starting now instead of waiting until you make more. The habit costs you almost nothing at $50,000 and it's already running on autopilot by the time your income doubles. If you're at this income and you feel behind, you're not behind. You're early. The habits built here compound harder than the same habits built later, simply because they have more years left to work. At $100,000, take-home jumps to about $79,180 a year or $6,598 a month. That's real breathing room compared to the first bracket. It's also exactly where things start to go quietly wrong for a lot of people, because breathing room is precisely when spending expands to fill it without anyone noticing. Remember that $150,000 household from the start of this video? Just as likely to be living paycheck to paycheck as a household earning half that. This is their bracket, or close to it. Somewhere in this range is where a lot of households stop tracking their spending, because for the first time it finally feels like there's enough. That feeling of enough is exactly what allows the problem to build quietly, for years, before it shows up as stress at a much higher income. 3 moves matter most here. First, start actually tracking where your money goes, categorized, not just glanced at once a month. At $50,000, your spending was constrained by necessity almost automatically. At $100,000, it's constrained by nothing except your own attention. And attention is the exact thing most people quietly stop paying once the financial stress disappears. This doesn't need to be complicated. A simple version works fine. Housing, transportation, food, debt payments, savings and investing, and everything else. 5 or 6 categories, reviewed monthly, catches lifestyle creep months before it becomes a habit instead of years after it's already set in. It needs to be consistent, not elaborate. Second, benchmark your net worth against a real published standard, not a vague feeling of doing fine. Fidelity publishes a widely used savings target based on age, and it's worth stating exactly because it comes straight from their own research. 1 times your salary saved by age 30, 3 times by 40, 6 times by 50, 8 times by 60, and 10 times by age 67. On a $100,000 salary, that means $100,000 saved by 30, $300,000 by 40, $600,000 by 50. Fidelity is explicit that these are aspirational targets, not pass or fail tests, and most people are behind them, especially before 50. But a real number to measure against beats a feeling every single time. Third, this is where it becomes worth figuring out your own number precisely instead of relying on someone else's generic benchmark, because your age, your current savings, and your target retirement age all change the math meaningfully. That's exactly why we built a calculator specifically for this video. Linked below. Put in your income, your age, and what you've already saved, and it returns the actual savings rate you personally need, not a generic guideline built around someone else's timeline and someone else's starting point. One more thing worth stating plainly at this bracket, because it's easy to overlook. If your employer offers a 401k match and you're not contributing enough to get the full amount, that's the one piece of advice in this entire video that has no exceptions. The most common match formula, according to Fidelity's own plan data, is dollar for dollar on your first 3% contributed, then 50 cents on the dollar for the next 2%. Contribute 5% of your salary, and your employer effectively adds another 4%. On top, free, before any of your own investment returns even start compounding. At $100,000 a year, walking away from that match costs you roughly $4,000 annually in money that was already yours to claim. The habit that separates people who keep building wealth at this bracket from people who quietly plateau here isn't the income. Both groups are earning the exact same $100,000. It's whether they're still paying attention once the financial pressure that forced discipline at $50,000 disappears. At $180,000, take-home lands around $134,300 a year, or about $11,200 a month. On paper, this should be the easiest bracket in this entire video to manage. In practice, it's usually the one where things go wrong the most quietly, and now you know exactly why. This is the bracket where the paycheck to paycheck rate stops dropping and flattens out, according to the same data we opened with. There's one thing specific to this income that doesn't apply to either bracket before it. If you're a single filer earning $180,000, you are above the income limit to contribute directly to a Roth IRA. For 2026, that eligibility phases out completely at $168,000 for single filers. If that's you, the direct route is closed, but a backdoor Roth conversion remains fully legal and available. Here's roughly how it works. You contribute to a traditional IRA, which has no income limit on contributions, only on deductibility, and then convert that balance to a Roth IRA. Assuming you don't already hold other pre-tax IRA balances that complicate the conversion, there's little to no additional tax owed on the conversion itself. It's an extra administrative step, not a loophole that might disappear. It's been standard legal practice for over a decade. Don't let the loss of the simple direct option mean you stop funding a Roth account altogether. There's also a second tax-advantaged account worth mentioning at this income specifically because it's the one most people at every bracket underuse, the health savings account. If you're on a high-deductible health plan, the 2026 contribution limit is $4,400 for individual coverage or $8,750 for family coverage. Money goes in tax-free, grows tax-free, and comes out tax-free for medical expenses, which is a better tax structure than either a 401k or a Roth IRA offers on their own. At this income, maxing out an HSA before increasing contributions elsewhere is one of the highest value moves available, and it's the one most commonly skipped. 3 moves matter most here, and the theme running through all 3 is the same. At this income, discipline matters more than any single tactic, because tactics stop mattering once lifestyle creep quietly eats the surplus before it ever reaches an account that builds wealth. First, put a hard rule around lifestyle upgrades, especially your car, which is where creep shows up first and biggest. The 24-10 rule is a good one. 20% down, no more than a 4-year loan term, and the monthly payment itself should never exceed 10% of your monthly take-home pay. At this income, that ceiling works out to about $1,100 a month. Not a target to reach, a ceiling not to cross. Every dollar of car payment above that ceiling isn't buying a meaningfully better car, it's quietly moving you toward the same paycheck to paycheck bracket as someone earning half what you do. Second, calculate an actual financial independence number instead of vaguely wanting to retire early someday. Take a household earning $180,000 a year with $400,000 already invested. Save 20% of income and, assuming a 4% safe withdrawal rate and a moderate 5% average real return above inflation, both standard planning assumptions rather than guarantees, that household reaches financial independence in about 28 years. Push the savings rate to 30% instead, and that timeline drops to about 22 years. 6 years disappear entirely from one decision about spending versus saving, with no change in income at all. That's not a motivational estimate, that's the same compounding math the financial independence, retire early community has relied on for years, applied honestly to this specific bracket instead of borrowed from someone else's numbers. Third, And this one comes with a real caveat. This is the income level, where it can start to make sense to put a small, deliberate slice of a portfolio into higher conviction, higher risk positions instead of exclusively broad index funds. I want to be direct about this because it runs against the usual message on this channel. This is not for everyone watching this video, and if you're not already debt-free, don't have a full emergency fund, and haven't maxed out your tax-advantaged accounts, skip this entirely and go back to move one. But if the foundation is genuinely built, deciding in advance that, for example, 5 to 10% of a portfolio goes toward specific, researched, higher conviction positions, and capping it firmly there, is a completely different decision than letting speculation creep into an entire portfolio by accident over time. The cap in advance is what turns it into a strategy instead of a gamble, and it's the difference between the two that actually matters. So here's the actual answer to the question this video opened with. There is no salary where money automatically stops being stressful. 50,000, 100,000, 180,000. Every single one of these brackets has people quietly thriving in it and people quietly falling behind in it, earning the exact same income as each other. The difference was never the paycheck itself. It was always the 3 or 4 specific decisions made at that specific number. Notice the pattern running underneath all 3 brackets in this video. It was never really about credit cards or Roth IRAs or car loans specifically. Underneath each one was the same idea. Your income determines your options, but it doesn't decide what you do with them. That part stays entirely up to you, at $50,000, at $180,000, and at every number in between. If you want your exact numbers, instead of the bracket averages used throughout this video, the calculator built for this exact video is linked below. Put in your income, your age, and your current savings. And it tells you which bracket you're actually in, and the specific savings rate you need from here, calculated for you and nobody else. It's part of the full calculator vault available to members, alongside every other tool built for this channel. Let me know in the comments which bracket you're in, and whether the moves in this video already match what you're actually doing. If they don't yet, that's fine too. Today is a reasonable day to start. See you in the next one.